we're live, not you're live, we're live. We're live on Facebook and Instagram. And Bowie is here to say hi, and then she's going, hi everyone. Right, off we go. Okay, so welcome. I'm going to stand up to start with. So this morning we're going to do a live tutorial
Can you
to
warn
make,
me if you're going to stand up?
to make felt flowers. So I, as a lot of you probably already know, am the author of Felting Fabulous Flowers, okay, which is my book. And we have a lot of kits as well to make flowers as well. I've brought some of the flowers with me home into the conservatory to show you. It's all a bit makeshift in here, so bear with us. So we're on Instagram and Facebook, so I'll try and talk to both of you at the same time. But I've brought, and also the camera is obviously like locked off, so I'm going to try and show you stuff, but shout if you can't see it. So here are some of the flowers from my book. This is the felt lily. I've got some real lilies here, I don't know if you can see them. The felt tiger lily. I've got the daffodil here. This one's very popular, the poppy. I've got the hibiscus, lots of my roses, which I have got a kit to make, and also a live course, an online course to make the felt rose as well. So I've got those here in a number of different colours. These look really nice on a coat or a hat. That's the dog asking to go outside. She's made her appearance and now she's off. And obviously I have dressed up for the occasion today, as you can see, but be safe in the knowledge that I've got my leisure wear on from the waist down, like I'm sure you all have as well. Hopefully some of you you're in your pyjamas. Oh, and also we're saving this so that people can watch it when they get back from work, because I know some of you are working and we're not all at home with our feet up. And thank you to those of you that are still working, whatever you're doing, NHS, supermarkets, whatever. So hopefully you guys can watch this later. So I've got some of my flowers to show you, but the actual flowers that we're going to make, I've tried to keep it current. I was thinking, well, it's spring. Let's make something appropriate to that. That's not going to take all day. So I just need to let the dog out now, you know, live TV. Okay, dog out. She might come back in a minute. Well, she probably will come back in a minute. So anyway, so I think we're going to make, well, we are going to make the cherry blossom from my book, okay? And then I'm going to show you how to make the anenome from our kit, okay? So if you're interested in making this and you don't have the bits, this comes as a kit. If you're interested in making some of the other flowers from my book, I'll talk about that at the end, but we sell a pack with everything you need in it, okay? And we obviously all sell all the bits separately as well. But what I'm going to be using today is just some pale pink wool and some yellow olive wool and a little bit of rose pink wool to make this tiny little cherry blossom. Now obviously you can make loads of these. I'm just going to make one, but it would make sense that you'd probably make more, and you can make a bigger piece of felt. So I've got quite a lot of wool here. You wouldn't need all of this if you're just going to make one. The other thing I'm going to be using today is a bamboo mat and some netting, and we sell this as a little kit like this, okay? You do need that if you're going to do wet felting. You need a bamboo mat and a net. And then I'm also going to just use, very briefly actually, but I am going to use some needle felting equipment, which also comes in this pack, which is some foam and a felting needle. Okay, so we'll come to that in a little bit. The other things I've got is just an old squirty bottle with some washing up liquid in it and some lukewarm water. That's my basic felting solution. If you've never done felting before, it's very straightforward. You don't need much. Just this soapy water with the washing up liquid, or if you're in the States, detergent, I think it's called. And then a bar of soap. So I've just got my gorgeous, gorgeous olive oil soap that I got in France, but you could literally use any soap. Just the cheapest soap from the supermarket is fine. It's the alkalinity of the soap that's important, okay? And then I've just got a dishcloth, and I've got a little tea towel under my mat, and yeah. Oh, and also I'm going to be using Gem Tack, which is our favourite glue that we use for everything. And also I'm going to mention this as well, which is called Stiffen Stuff. Sounds a bit weird, but actually my husband's making a face. But actually this is just for stiffening your textiles, okay? So we'll come to that in a little bit. Oh, and I've also got some pins and a needle and some scissors. Got everything here. Got a little saucer as a template. I've got a Sharpie. It's all going on. Right, okay. Let's start with the cherry blossom, okay? So I have set this up a little bit Blue Peter style-y. So I've got some bits that I've already prepared so that you don't need to watch me rubbing, felting and rolling for days. And also we couldn't set it up so that I went over to the sink and showed you all the rinsing and everything. So I will explain it, but hopefully we can like keep the pace up so that you don't all fall asleep. Well, I mean, it's fine if you do fall asleep, but hopefully you won't. All right, so to make the cherry blossom then, what we're going to do is we're going to start off by laying out some pink wool tops into a square directly onto the bamboo mat, okay? Now, I know some of you have been following me for ages and know what felting is and have done it, but for those of you that perhaps don't know, just very briefly, wool tops is unspun wool, okay? It's the same stuff you would use if you're going to spin yarn, okay, using a drop spindle or a spinning wheel, but it's also what we use for felting, okay? So it comes like this with all of the fibres facing in the same direction, which is super handy for doing felting, okay? And one of the most important things, if you only listen to one thing I say, is how to pull the wool apart and how to lay it out. And that will really determine how effective your felting is, how well it works out, and how your end result looks. So if you don't lay the wool out correctly, it will be much harder to rub together, and your felt will be like lumpy and bumpy, and it won't be quite so pleasing when you've finished it. So I'm not quite sure how we can do this. I want to show everyone. So my very expert husband is behind the camera. He normally works, you know, on the Brit Awards and Reading Festival and stuff, you know, so this is all a little bit low key for him. Next time apparently we're having a 10 camera shoot. What I want to show them, Chris, is how to pull the wool apart effectively. Can everyone see that, or do I need to come closer? Any questions so far? You, I'm asking you, yeah. That you can see that have been typed.
Right, no.
No, not from
What's
you.
What's for dinner?
So, Indonesian stir fry, actually,
nice.
Since you asked. So this is really, really important, okay, how we pull the wool apart. So let me show you what not to do, okay? So what not to do would be to do that. So if I show you the difference between that and this, okay, can you see the difference, okay? Yeah. This is way, way too thick. So whilst it would felt together, it will felt together all lumpy and bumpy. This is what you're aiming for. It should, if I hold it up against my top, it should be really wispy. Wispy is the key word, okay? And then what I want to show you is the way I'm laying it down on the mat. So if I just hold the mat up here, okay, I want you to see that I'm laying it down with all the fibres facing in the same direction, in the opposite direction to the slats of the mat, okay? So I've never done this before, so this is a first. So I'm just going to do it like this. So I'm laying it down in the opposite direction to the slats. Okay, let me lay it back down again here. Perhaps should I just move it forward a bit? Would that help?
I think you're all right.
You think I'm all right? Okay. So, what I'm going to do is just lay out a little square of this, okay? I'm just doing it super fast now, having shown you how to do it super slow. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get some more, let me show you again really, really slowly. What I'm doing is holding it about 6 to 8 inches down with the hand I don't write with. Then the hand I do write with, I'm just pulling it off gently. I'm releasing the fibres. My husband's telling me to go lower. I'm releasing the fibres, and now I'm just going to lay them in the opposite direction over the top, okay? So what we're aiming to do here is just get a good amount of fibres laid up over the top. So you don't need a great big mound of it, like Dougal from the Magic Roundabout. You just need enough so that you can no longer see what's underneath, okay? So once we've done that, okay, then you're going to take the netting. This is a really, really simple one to start with. It's great because it's just one colour. We're going to add the other colour using the felting needle. Taking the netting, so this is just a piece of the same sort of netting that you'd hang at the window, okay? And that goes over the top like that. It's got a few bits on it from the other bit that I was making earlier. Let's just get those off. Then, felting solution, okay? So all this is a squirt of washing up liquid with lukewarm water. Don't go too crazy with the washing up liquid. You don't need like a whole, like, you know, 100 mils. It's like a dessert spoonful. And then lukewarm water. That's your basic felting solution. Nothing more complicated than that. That gets squidged over the top, okay? You don't need too much. You don't need it so that it like spills onto the floor and you create a little bit of a paddling pool. What you do need, however, is just a dishcloth to just push it through the fibres. So obviously I've got my netting. Can you see okay? Yeah. I've got my netting on top, and what I'm aiming to do here is get all of the air out of it, okay? So if it's still puffy, okay, that means you haven't got all the air out of it and it's not going to felt together. So what you need to do is just keep adding more of the soapy water until it feels like you've just wet it all the way through and it's completely flat as a pancake, okay? So I'm just going to keep going. And the other thing that should start to happen, as long as you've got a decent amount of washing up liquid in there, is that you should start to get some lava, all right? So the lava is really, really, really important. Can you see it on my hands? If you feel like you haven't got an awful lot of lava, then you can get your soap and just pop that over the top to create a little bit more, okay? And you're just going to keep going like that. Now I am going to just pick this up now and show everyone and see if I can show. Yes.
Why do you lay the wool in different directions?
Okay, very good question, whoever asked that. So we're laying the wool in different directions for two reasons. Firstly, it sort of makes it a bit stronger, but the most important reason is that the wool shrinks in this direction, okay? So it's going to go zhoop, like that. So if you laid them all the fibres out, all going the same way, you'd end up with a very long, thin piece of felt. By doing it in both directions, you're evening out the shrinkage when we come to shrink it a bit later, okay? I just wanted to show you then that there's no air left in this. It's completely flat as a pancake. Do you think you can see that okay? And then what we need to do now is just rub it. So this is the kind of dull bit. Not for you guys to do at home. I mean, it's dull for you to watch me do it now. So it's quite mindless, you know, you can stick on a podcast, listen to some music, but basically you need to give this a 10-minute rub on one side like this. I'll just go for a little bit. You should have a situation where you could write your name in the soap and see it. Then you know that it's wet and soapy enough, okay? So you'd keep rubbing that for about 10 minutes. So pretend I've done that. For those of you following along doing this live with me now, carry on rubbing while I'm talking, and hopefully by the time I've finished talking you will have rubbed it enough. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to peel the net back, obviously pretend I've rubbed that for 10 minutes, and then I would pick it up like this, okay, turn it over, remove the piece of my hair that's stuck to it, turn it over, pop the netting back on top again like this, and then carry on for another 10 minutes. Okay, so it's a 20-minute rub really, so we don't want to be watching me doing that now, do we? So, are you ready? Here's one I prepared earlier. Okay, so I'm going to just jump now to the one I've prepared earlier, but I'm going to outline the rest of the process to you first. All right, and I'm going to show you the rolling. So imagine I had rubbed that for 20 minutes. Then what I would do is I would just fold it up like this and I'd go off to the sink. So now pretend I'm at the sink, okay, and I turn on the lukewarm water. So pretend the lukewarm water is now flooding out here, and I would just show it the lukewarm water like this, and I would just squidge it out, show it again, squidge it out. Make sure you've rubbed it enough before you do that, because obviously going and sticking it under the tap when you've not rubbed it enough isn't a good idea. It'll probably fall to bits. So make sure you do your full 20-minute rub, and also you can test it if you want to. You can rub the fibres and check that they're stationary and not wobbling around too much. So once you've done that little rinse, okay, come back to your mat, and this time you're going to turn it 90 degrees so it's kind of portrait in front of you. And my advice is to pop a tea towel or a towel underneath it, okay, to stop it from slipping around rather. And then you're going to take your rinsed piece of rubbed felt and you're going to place it into your mat like this, okay? So this is the fulling process. It's the bit where we roll it and rinse it to shrink it and harden it, okay? So I'm just going to roll it up now and show you how to do that. You roll it up as tightly as you possibly can, okay? If you roll this up really, really loosely, it's much, much harder to do. So roll it up tightly, and then it's 20 rolls backwards and forwards. This is where the camera might wobble a bit, does it? Are we okay? Oh, well done. Okay, so 20 rolls backwards and forwards. And then what that does, it's terribly interesting and exciting. Well, it is if you're me. You might not agree. It starts to shrink in the direction you're rolling it in, okay? So therefore, you're going to constantly keep rotating it and turning it to achieve an overall even shrinkage. Okay, so now I'm turning it 90 degrees clockwise. I'm going to repeat that again. Roll it up, 20 rolls like this, backwards and forwards, and again, this is very boring for you to watch me do the whole thing. So I'm just going to outline what you would do. Then you would turn it again, 20 rolls, and again 20 rolls. So you've done 20 in each direction. Then you turn it over and do another 20 in each direction. So you've done 80 rolls in total. And you'll notice that it's really started to shrink and harden at that point. Then you'd go back to the sink, hot water tap on this time, as hot as you can get it so that it's not burning your hands, obviously. And then rinsing it under hot water, and then cold tap on, rinsing it under cold tap and getting all of the soap out. It's important you get all of the soap out of your work at the end, else it might rot the wool over a longer period of time. And then you can rinse your mat as well if you want to, if it's full of soap. So then you'd come back and you'd repeat that rolling process all over again. So you do 20 rolls in each direction on both sides, okay? And then you will end up with this. So let's just look at the difference in size actually. You can see how much it shrinks. It tends to shrink by about 20%, all right, when you're making felt. So that's what you need to make this particular felt flower from. In my book, I use a combination of wet felting and also needle felting to make the flowers, and they are 100% made out of wool. So I haven't used any silk stamens or anything. Did nearly lose the plot trying to do that. Here's the hibiscus, which has got a felt stamen with lots of little felt pollen stuck to it. I think I made it in the bath actually, that one. It's good to have a warm soapy environment to make felt in. The bath is perfect. So going back to the cherry blossom, how do you cut the shape out? So in my book, if you have the book, at the end are all the templates and the shapes that you need to cut things from, and the cherry blossom happens to be on this last page here, so you would just need to trace it and cut it out. However, yes, question?
Chilcott Kate,
Hello,
my felt always shrinks more than yours.
That's okay.
What am I doing too much of?
Do you know what? I like felt that's shrunk a lot because I think then it's so much better. I don't like fluffy sort of half-made felt, so I don't think that's a bad thing. But you're probably just really good at rolling, I would imagine, and really good at rubbing. So the more you rub and the more you roll, the more it will shrink. Maybe knowing that you're so excellent at that, just lay it out slightly larger to start with would be my advice.
Silver Birch Studio asks,
Silver Birch Studio.
My felt tends to have an imprint of the bamboo mat on it.
That's okay.
Do you have any advice to get rid of this? Iron it?
You could do. I mean, yeah, I know what you mean. Like, I'd often get that as well, but it would kind of go if you just brushed over it. Or maybe try putting a towel inside your bamboo mat and rolling it in the towel, so it will still give it a final roll that will flatten it out, but you won't get the bamboo. But yeah, you can iron felt. Just make sure if you used Angelina, which is the sparkly stuff, that you use a tea towel. Do you know what? I would always use a tea towel anyway, and don't make the iron too hot, but yes, you could iron it, absolutely. Yeah, any more?
We are going to have this, try and get this online for everybody to watch.
Yes, it's going to go online. Last time we forgot to press the button on the Instagram, but we're going to press it today, I promise, and we're going to save it on Facebook as well, and then if we can, we'll put it on YouTube. We're actually filming it on a third camera, maybe, to put it on there as well, so we'll see. But yes, it will be available permanently on Facebook, because I think it just goes on the feed, and then on Instagram it's available for 24 hours on the top story bits. Okay, so moving swiftly on. So yes, so the template's in the back of the book for all of the flowers, but I am just going to show you how to cut out a flower without a template, even if you're really scared and think that that's not for you. I'm just going to be a bit gung-ho, and I'm just going to cut out a circle. Well, you know, rough. Let me use this as a rough guide, shall I? Just be horribly sensible for a moment. Not often horribly sensible, but you know. I'll just make it slightly bigger actually as well, just so you can all see what I'm doing. So I'm just cutting out a circle, not a perfect circle, but you know, that's fine, isn't it? And then one of the ways I like to do it, if it's a 5-petaled flower, which this is, in fact both of them are that I'm making today, is by using dressmaking pins. So if you get some pins, rather than drawing on it, actually I often instruct people to just draw a 5-pointed star, or you could trace the thing in the book, obviously. But if you don't want to do that, if you just get 5 pins and just pop them in, can everyone see what I'm doing? I'm not doing a very good job actually, because I've done it as if it's a 6-pointed one. So I'm just going to move them around a bit. But if you get your 5 equal segments, okay, onto the little piece of felt, then you know where to make your cuts to cut the petals. That's not perfect, but it will do for now, okay? Can you see? Everyone see that okay? So, you know, if you're not happy with that, you just move them around. Move them around till you've got 5 equal-ish segments, okay? So now what I'm going to do, just to show you a way of doing it without using the template, is I'm just going to cut where those pins are. Just some little cuts, just of about 1 centimetre, okay? Like so. And then I'm going to remove the pins, okay? And so that's given me my 5 segments on my circle, like a little, and actually this is the way that you would do this one as well, okay? I can talk you through that one afterwards if you like. So there's your 5 segments, okay? And now all I'm going to do is I'm going to round off these petals. Can everyone see okay? Am I in the right place, Chris?
Yeah.
Should I come closer?
Well, just cut them and then show.
Cut and show. Okay, I'll do it as quickly as I can. Got any good jokes while I'm doing this? You, I mean.
Oh, probably not.
No.
To Instagram.
No, okay, that's fine.
Or Facebook.
No, we'd probably get taken off air. Right, okay. So there we go. So I'm just cutting my 5 petals. So that's that, okay? So then what I did with this particular flower was I did a little bit of needle felting. All right, so I'm just going to switch over to the needle felting just here. So for those of you that aren't in the know, and I'm sure most of you are, but I'll just quickly run through what needle felting even is. It's another way of felting wool together with no soap and no water, but you just use, this is slightly bent, sorry, you just use a very, very sharp barbed needle. So this has got little barbs on it at the end, like little nicks almost. And as you stab it in and out of wool, into foam, obviously behind, so that you don't stab straight onto the table, it holds it together, it felts it together. Okay, so this is a brilliant way. You've probably seen stuff, if you've not used it yourself or tried it yourself, you've probably seen stuff online that's been made using needle felting. There's lots of little animals and people make little dogs. We have loads of kits to make little brooches. It's great for sculptural work. So one of the courses I run is little needle felted birds and fish. We've got a great kit actually called Chirpy Chappy, which is to make a little bird, and it's great for doing all this sculptural stuff, and I use it quite a lot in my Felt Flowers book. So for example, these little red bits on the tiger lily, they've been added using the felting needle, and sometimes it's the fine details on flowers that you would use this for. So things where, you know, like when you're making wet felt, it's very difficult to do things exactly and do very exact details and designs on things, and that's what the felting needle's good for. So the little lines on the pansy.
Do you want to pass that over and I'll show people
and then
a close up?
This leaf would be another good one to show when you've done that. That leaf. So you can see the lines on the leaf. I've needle felted those on afterwards. And the tiger lily. Do you want to show the spots on the tiger lily?
Sorry, I'm having to show it to two different cameras.
And that one as well. Okay, so top tips for needle felting with these needles. They're ever so cheap. They're like, I think they're 40p, or we sell 10 for £3.50 or something like that. And if you get this pack, you get a needle felting kit in there. So you get the foam, you get the needles. The only thing to remember about these is they have a weak spot here where, do you want to hold the needle up in front of the camera?
It might not focus.
No, it might not focus, okay. But they have a weak spot just here, where the way it's forged. So you have to be terribly careful that you don't stab it too violently, although obviously the temptation to do that right now is quite strong. You just have to try and, can I have it back? Thanks. You have to try and do it as gently as you can so that you don't snap. If they do snap, they tend to snap from there downwards. So always gentle stabbing when you're using the felting needle. Okay. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to come forward a little bit so I might make it easier to see, is I've just got off some candy pink wool tops. I've just pulled off a tiny, tiny, tiny bit. And often the amounts of wool that I'm using for these felt flowers is literally minuscule. It's just hardly any required. Literally a piece of fluff, okay?
Right, hold on, I need to reposition.
Oh, do you? Well, shall I stay where I was?
No.
Okay.
We're all right.
And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just needle felt. I don't know how I'm going to do this so you can all see. I'm just going to stab in some of the candy pink into the centre. I'm going to use a little bit more actually, and just make it a tiny bit bigger so you can all see what I'm doing. So in the actual flower itself, I'm going to then indent it with using a different felting needle. Let me use more so that you can actually see it a bit better. It might be a bit OTT. Oh, now I've moved the whole table forward by leaning on it. Okay, so when I'm needle felting, the important thing is to just stab gently. It's to hold the needle about halfway down and just stab through the wool into the foam. And as you can see, if I now turn this over, you've got all of these loose fibres coming out the back, which shows that it's attaching together. So I'm just going to carry on doing that. In the instructions for this flower, I then did also use a tiny, tiny bit of the rose pink right in the centre of this one as well.
Can you use more than one needle at a time? You
can. You could hold two at once, but there's absolutely no reason to do that in this instance. The only reason I would do that is if, hang on, I'm here. The only reason I would do that is if I was making something a lot bigger, or if I was making like, sometimes we're making the birds and the fish and doing the sculptural stuff, then I would hold two together like this. And then if you buy the kit, you also get a multi-needle tool where you can put 4 needles in and stab 4 at once, so something a lot bigger. But you need to make sure that you don't use that too early on, because it can distort what you're making if it's not been needle felted enough. Okay, so we sell 2 different sorts of needles. I only ever use 2 different sorts of needles. This is the 38 gauge star needle, star profile, so if you look at it head on, it's star shaped. And this is my all-round needle that I use for pretty much everything, okay? So this is my go-to, but we do also have here a 36 gauge triangular needle. And when you won't be able to see it, but as I'm twiddling it, it's actually triangular in shape, so it's got 3 distinct sort of facets or sides to it. This is much more heavy duty, so this will make much more of a difference when you stab into something. So if I stab into the centre of this now, it will kind of indent it. And what I did when I made this flower is I kind of used the edge of the foam and tried to sort of shape it inwards. So if I actually come to this one now and show you, I carried on stabbing it so that I got this kind of indentation down, and it made it look a little bit more realistic.
Shop K002 asks, how do you stop the needle felting sticking to the foam?
Well, yeah, it will stick to the foam if you do it repeatedly over and over. So if I carry on stab for ages and ages and ages and ages and ages, it will stick to the foam, but then you just every now and again release it, pick it up, and it'll be fine. All that will happen is you'll just leave a few fibres in the foam, so not a big deal. But you can see the more, hang on, let me use the right needle, the more I stab into the throat of this flower, let me just do it for a second so you can see, the more it will indent inwards. Okay, so you can see it's starting to go. Can you see, everybody? So that is how you're going to achieve that sort of more realistic look to the flower. So you don't just want a completely flat flower, it's got some sort of depth to it. Okay, so now I'm going to move on. We might need to just pan up again because I can't carry on leaning over the table. I'm going to carry on and show you how to make the stamens and the pollen, I know. So these are quite fiddly, I won't lie. However, they're also quite quick, so that's good. And you're going to go back to the wet felting again, and you're going to go back to the soap and the water again, but not in quite the same way. So I have made some already here to show you, but I'm going to show you also how to start them off. Oh, Betty, did you want to come back, baby? Boo, come here. Come here. Come here. Come on the chair, look. No, that's not going to happen. Okay. So when you're pulling the stamens off, you need to just maybe elongate the wool slightly. And the important thing here is to twist them and try and figure out how they are going to look when they're actually felted, so there's no air left back in there. Because that is what you're going to have to fit through the eye of a large needle in order to get them in and out of the flower. So it's important that you don't make the stamens too fat and too wide and too thick, okay? So that's ideal, okay? So I would get 4 of those, I think it's 4 or 5, I can't remember what the book says now, like this. And I think the best way to do this, I have found anyway, once you've got them ready, is to get yourself a little saucer and just sprinkle some of your soapy water into the saucer and then just drag them through one at a time and get them nice and wet down with the soapy water. And then what I do is I just drag them across the bar of soap a couple of times to get them nice and soapy. Okay, so you're going to do that with all of them. I won't bother doing it with all of them now. And then what you're going to do is pop them onto your bamboo mat in a line at the bottom like this. Once they're all wet and soapy, obviously. And then you're just going to flip the end of the bamboo mat over and roll them backwards and forwards. Okay. And you'll find that they come together quite quickly. You can go and then rinse them under a hot tap. Let me now switch to the ones that I've pretty much finished. You can go and rinse them under a hot tap, okay, and then soap them up again, and then come back and then pop them back in the mat again. Flip the end over and back and forth, okay? And you just do that until they feel and look felted. The other brilliant thing now is to use the stiffened stuff. I'm not going to actually do it, but what you would do is get another saucer, a little bit of that, dilute it with water a bit, drag them through, leave them somewhere warm to dry, and they'll dry poker straight, which just makes the flowers look quite nice. Here's some that I've done on the fuchsia, and you can see because they're all completely straight, it looks quite cool, I think. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to sew these in and out, okay, and then I'm going to show you how you would then put the pollen on top. So let me just choose one to go through my needle, and now I'm going to hopefully thread the needle with it. There we go, okay. The needle I'm using, before anybody asks, it's a bit short this one actually, is a yarn darner, okay. I use these a lot. A yarn darner is basically quite a long needle with quite a big eye, but it's very sharp, which is perfect for most of the stuff I do with felt and stuff. I don't know, it just works, so that's what I use. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down through the throat of the flower, and then being careful not to pull it all the way out again. In fact, this is super tricky because it's not really long enough. I'm going to come back up again, just slightly further along, like that, okay? And then I'm going to pull it at the bottom. So there are my 2 stamens, okay? Shall I do another 2? To finish it off, are you all on the edge of your seats? Wow, what's going to happen next? What will the outcome of this be? So I'm now going to thread another one through the eye of the needle. Probably also super short, should be slightly longer, didn't make them quite long enough for this. Then I'm going to go down through the top again, pull it through, taking care not to lose the end of it, and then I'm going to come up a slightly different place. There we go, I've done it. Like that, and pull that one taut as well. Let's just go with the 4 stamens for now, okay? Obviously those are super long, we don't want them that long. Come closer, 4 stamens. I'm just going to trim them off with my scissors like so. Okay, they're still probably a little bit long actually for a cherry blossom. Should have gone and got a real cherry blossom off the tree, not allowed out, couldn't do that. So there we go, there's my little stamens, and then I'm just going to quickly show you how to make the pollen. Alright, pollen, so tiny, not even going to be able to see it on the camera. Pollen is basically just those annoying felt balls that you get on your jumper. Can everyone see? So all I've done to make the pollen, hang on, let me just grab some wool, is I've just got such a tiny, in fact, whatever bit you pull off, just pull it in half because it'll be too big. Tiny bits of wool, get them soapy in the soapy water, get them soapy in your soap, and then literally just twiddle them between your finger and thumb until they're felted. Obviously rinse the soap out, and then you've got, just dry my hands, your pollen, which you would then glue to the end of your stamen, not at all fiddly, using the gem tack, which I, oh yes, there's a blob of gem tack that's come out, slightly too much gem tack. What is quite good to do is to use some tweezers. Okay, can you see that? I don't know if you can.
Really.
Shall I come close? Do you want to take it from me? Oh, he's doing zooming, I think. I feel like such a weirdo, leaning across my conservatory table, holding a felt flower with a piece of pollen on it. Yeah, there we go. It's a bit fluffy, but you can kind of see the general idea. And now hold up the original one next to it, maybe. There you are. So you can see that's how the pollen is done. So a lot of these flowers that have pollen on them, like this one for example, all of these little bits of pollen here have been made in the same way. This little carnation pink has been made in a very similar way. The stamen's been done in a similar way, but just bent back at the ends there. You can see the hibiscus pollen, that's been done in the same way. The stamens on the daffodil have been done in the same way. Yes.
Gillian, do you sell gem tack?
We do, funnily enough. Thank you. Funnily enough, we do, yes. So that's on the website. If you just type it at the top, I can't remember where it is. It's probably under Make, Do and Mend, or it might be in felting equipment. Don't know. Type it in the top in the search bar and it'll come up. But yeah, it's brilliant. It's actually designed for like come dancing outfits to stick sequins onto costumes and stuff. Great for sticking metal to fabric, fabric to metal, but also great for fabric to fabric. Use it for everything. Brilliant. And it lasts for ages. So that's that. Any questions about any of the other flowers before I move on from my book, before I move on to the anenome that I'm going to do from the kit? No? Not yet?
Not yet.
Have a think? Okay. All right, so I'm going to move on to this now quickly. So this is one of our felt flower kits. We have got a number of different rose kits in about 4 or 5 different colours to make the roses. Plus I mentioned earlier there's an online course for that as well. And then we've also got a pansy, we've got this anemone, and another couple. Okay, they're all under flower felting kits, under felting kits. So we're going to do the anemone. Inside the pack, obviously you've got all of the wool that you need, you've got the instructions, but you do also need separately to get the little mat and the net kit with our flower kits. Obviously once you've got this, you can reuse this, and it's a great size for making small things from, okay? But I'm just going to show you basically, you get the brooch back.
There's
as
a
well.
couple of questions in.
Yes, go on.
Sorry, I've missed some from people. How do you finish off the back of the flower?
Well, it's up to you. It depends what you're going to do with it. Like if you were just going to make this into a corsage flower, which I guess is what a lot of people would do, you would just buy a little brooch back and then just sew that on the back of it.
Okay, another question. The trumpet on the daffodil, is that glued on?
No. So these instructions are all in the book, but basically this is made from one flat piece of felt with the yellow, and then a separate strip of felt with the orange, which is then needle felted on. I don't know if you can see actually on the back of it, you can see the oranges come through there. So that's needle felted, mostly because it's needle felting is quite sculptural and it allows you to shape things. So you can even add in like little shapings to it. Makes it look more realistic with the needle felting. And then I've actually, I don't know if you can see, but I've needle felted the top of it as well down, to give like a little scalloped edge almost to how a flower petal edge would be, so it's not just flat. The other thing is I don't like cut edges, so a lot of what I do will be like finished edges rather than cut edges. So this is a strip of felt that I've made so it has a finished edge that I've then needle felted into before attaching it, turning it into a circle and then attaching it with the needle felting.
Kerry's up.
Hello, Kerry's up.
Is weird. No, she's been blending colours and sometimes it looks weird.
Blending colours, what, when you're laying them out?
I don't know, I'm just reading what's on the phone.
So if you're blending colours when you're laying them out, how does it look weird? I need more details.
Yeah, more details, Kerry's up.
I don't
but
quite
yes,
know what
you're
you mean.
weird.
Who said that she's weird?
She did.
Oh no.
Oh no, it looked weird. Sorry.
Oh my goodness, Christopher. It looks weird. So I think that when you're laying out the colours, if you're laying one colour over the top of another colour, maybe you need to make it more fine and wispy, perhaps, if that's what you mean. So like if you're laying one colour and then another colour, make them wispy and keep going until you achieve the look you're after, rather than just using two straight away. In fact, we're going to do a bit of that now when I lay out the wool for the anemone. So let me do that. I have got a Blue Peter version of it as well, so I'm not going to make you watch the whole thing again, but what I do want to do is to show you how to lay the wool out, because that's quite important. Where is the anemone? Oh, it's here. Right, so this is a super huge one. You don't need to make it quite this large. You could also turn this into a poppy. I know a lot of other people have done that, and the colours are quite similar in the pack. So you get the wool obviously to make the flower, which is 2 layers thick. The top layer of flower has got this white bit on it, and the bottom flower has got a slightly darker red to it, and then we've got green in there for the leaves as well. So I just want to show you, you start off by making laying out a big rectangle of the bright red wool, okay? So I'm just going to quickly show you again, just as a reminder, holding it down and releasing the fibres off like this, okay? So if you're holding the wool too high up, you can't pull the wool fibres away because you're holding on to them. They're quite long with this merino, so you can see it goes all the way down to here. So don't hold the wool too high up when you're pulling away at it, okay? So I'm just going to sort of lay out, I think it says in the instructions, a 10 by 12 inch rectangle, okay? So again, exactly as I did before with the pink, I'm laying the fibres all in the same direction to start with, okay? And then I'm going to lay another layer. I'm going to sort of speed up here and go a bit faster. My hands feel a bit soapy and it's sticking to my hands.
Are the flowers on your vintage vignette bag made this way?
Yes, funnily enough they are, whoever asked that.
Jax.
Thanks, Jax. Yes, they are made the same way. So that bag is one of our best-selling kits. It's really pretty. I haven't got it here, unfortunately, sorry, but it's on the website. The vintage vignette is like, in fact, it's this colour, and it's got little cherry blossoms all over it, and then the stem that goes around the bag. So it's really pretty. But yeah, that is how those flowers are made. Thanks for asking that. So one way like this, okay, and then I'm going to go in the opposite direction over the top like this. So this is just using the bright red, okay. And then what we're going to do is we're then going to just add some decoration onto the top of this. So once you've got these two basic layers, with anything that you're making really in a flat piece of felt, then you can start adding all sorts to the top of it. So if you were doing, like I run a course that's called Wet Felt Pictures with Needle Felt Embellishments, where we do landscapes and stuff. So once you've got these kind of base layers on, then you can just add the wool in any direction you like, and it doesn't have to go in any particular way, all right? So that's the red to start with. Then you get the piece of darker red, cherry red. So that goes over one side of this, because you're going to cut out the bottom flower from the darker red. So that goes over there like that. And I'm using slightly less of this darker red. It's slightly more wispy, I would say. Okay, so you're just sort of seeing a bit of a mottled effect. Maybe that answers your question, Kerry, about blending the colour. So I was just going to talk to you more about that with the white, actually. So on this side of the red, you're going to lay out this kind of radial amount of white that will give you this kind of centre of the anenome. So to do that, the easiest way to do that is to pull off quite short bits if you can. Just pull them off so they're not too long, and then just lay them out in a radial fashion. I'm going to actually do it that way because you get a nice end if you pull it off. And then, can everyone see what I'm doing? Or not really? I'll hold it up in a sec when I've done it. So like this. And then you can build this up gradually. So maybe this answers your question, Kerry, about blending the colours. So using very small amounts to start with, and then maybe adding more to them as you go, just to get the effect that you want. So really what you want here, as you can see from this, is that it's much whiter in the middle and it sort of fades out towards the edges and leaves the red. So that kind of thing. I won't bore you too much doing this, but I'd probably spend a little bit longer fiddle-faddling around with this. One of my top expressions, fiddle-faddling around. So I would just make sure that it looks quite blended as it goes from one colour to the other, okay? From the white to the red, but I won't bore you with that. So that's that, and then what you would do is you would cover it with the netting again, and you would wet it down with the soapy water again, and you would do that whole rigmarole of making the flat piece of felt. You could also, to save you time, add the green in on one side. In the instructions it actually says make it separately, but my top tip would be to add the green in on one side and then literally just make the whole piece of felt all in one go to make the flower with, so that you don't have to go through the whole process all over again. So once you've done that, you're going to cover it, wet it, soap it, rub it for 10 minutes on each side, 15 minutes on each side if it's a bit bigger. The bigger the piece you're making, the longer you're going to have to spend rubbing it because of the amount of coverage for your palms. Then you're going to go and rinse it at the tap, do all the rolling, and then rinse it at the tap a second time, get all the soap out and repeat the rolling. And then you will end up with a piece of felt like this, which I've just drawn 2 circles onto. So mine is actually still damp because I just made it this morning, but you can see there's the darker piece, okay? There's the lighter piece with the red radiating out. And then all I've done is I've just used a little saucer to draw around with a Sharpie, which is, you know, it's fine. Or you could just do it by eye, okay? So I am literally just going to cut those out now, just inside of the circle, just so I've got my nice round pieces of felt to make the flowers from. And then exactly the same deal as before. This is a 5-petaled flower. What I actually tell people to do in the instructions is to draw a 5-pointed star on a piece of paper and use that to help them mark out the petals. But like I showed you earlier, I actually think it's easier if you just use the dressmaking pins. Okay, so let me just quickly do these. And you can ask me any more questions you like before we wrap up. I'm going to quickly show you as well how I made the stamens and the ball in the centre, because we haven't covered felt balls. I've made one somewhere, don't know where it is. It's disappeared. Oh, it's there. Okay, so basically this one's going to go over this one. You're going to cut them in exactly the same way, using the pins again. So splitting this into 5, okay, cutting the petals. What I've done with the petals here is, I don't know if you can see, there's a little indent at the top of each petal. It makes it look more realistic when you look at the actual anenome. It's not just a round petal. Try to make them look more realistic and more lifelike, okay? Just quickly then, before we go, I'm going to quickly show you how to make the stamens for this, because they're a bit different. It looks like a spider. What I did with this stamen, you get the black wool that you've got in the kit and you pull off the bits like we did before for the cherry blossom, but this time you're laying them out in a star shape. So you pull off, I think it's 5 of these, okay, with a little bit in the centre, and you lay them out and then you put the net over them and you rub them until they are felted together. Let me just show you quickly, like that, okay, can everyone see? And then what I do is, once I think they're pretty much felted together, I twiddle them, technical term, twiddle, with plenty of soap, okay, I twiddle the stamens to make them a bit more rounded, okay. They're a little bit longer than they need to be, so you see on the actual flower itself, I've trimmed them, just like I did on the cherry blossom. And then in the centre of this flower, we've got a felt ball, okay, a little felt ball. So I'm just going to quickly show you how to make a felt ball. If you don't know how to make a felt ball, these are great to do with the kids. You can make necklaces and bracelets with felt balls as well. Question
from, oh, I can't even read that. How long does it take to dry the felt, and should you dry it flat?
So felt will dry just like your washing dries, basically. Best don't put it in the tumble dryer. Just like leave it on a radiator or somewhere warm and it will dry, just like a t-shirt would dry if you left a t-shirt on a radiator or somewhere warm. So do that, leave it to dry naturally. Yeah, leave it to dry flat would make sense. Like I mentioned earlier, you can iron things gently on a warm iron if you need to. With felt balls, pull off the amount of wool that you think you want to make the felt ball from, and then before you make it, scrunch it up tightly into a ball to see how big it will be, because this is how big it will end up. Once all the air's gone out of it and once it's felted, it's going to be quite diddy, that, so I'm going to pull off a little bit more. Same with felt necklaces if you're, or bracelets and stuff like that. Pull off the amount you want to do first and check. Alright, so this is a bit better. So I've just made it into a ball, and it's important that you don't have too many like crevices in it when you're making it.
Question, which flower kit would you recommend for a beginner?
So I would recommend this one because it's quite straightforward and there's no needle felting involved, and it's just flat pieces of felt, so it's a good one to learn the techniques with. The rose is lovely, but it's a little bit more complicated. The pansy would be nice as well. Or we've got another one that I can't remember the name of. Hang on a minute. Another felt flower kit that I can't remember the name of. One of my staff might be watching and might be able to tell me what it's called. Hang on 2 seconds everybody and I'll tell you what it's called. Felting. So if you go to felting and then you go to felting kits and then you go to flower felting kits.
This is great telling this.
Sorry, so there's one called Poetic Pansy, which is lovely, which was a nice big pansy that you could do. Oh, Tussie Mussy, that's it. Okay, so Tussie Mussy, that's a really cute one that I really love. Back to the felt ball, we're just covering that with a bit of soapy water, or you could dip it in your saucer, okay? Squidge out the excess, okay? Get it nice and soapy, get your hands nice and soapy, and roll it gently in your hands. Don't press hard, otherwise it'll turn into a squashed egg rather than a felt ball, okay? And you would keep doing this for 5 minutes till it starts to harden, and then what you would do, is you would start to roll it onto your bamboo mat, which just gives you a little bit of friction from underneath. So rolling really, really gently to start with, and as it starts to harden, you can press harder, and that's how you make a felt ball. So that's what's going to go in the middle here. Then you can glue these together, or you can sew these together. Then I've made a piece of the green as well here, and you can just mark on there the leaves and cut those out. Obviously the beauty of this is that it's felt and it doesn't fray, so you can just cut things out really easily. I've just sewn these on. Obviously you get a brooch back with this kit as well. You don't need to make this quite so large. It's quite large to have on your coat or hat or bag or anything. You could even make 2 smaller ones, which might be a nicer idea. My husband's been trying to make me laugh. So that's pretty much it. So if you want to have a go at this and you don't have anything, what would I recommend? I would thoroughly recommend this because you save 25% on buying everything separately. So in this pack, which is on our website, called the Felting Fabulous Flowers and Kits and Wool pack, that memorable name. So you save 25% on this. You get the book, you get the little mat and the net that I was just using, you get the needle felting kit, which is the foam, 4 needles, multi-needle tool and a bit of wool in there. And then you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different packs of wool tops in all the colours of the rainbow. I mean, they're not sort of specifically to make any flowers in particular, but hopefully it gives you enough of a palette to sort of have a go. So that's a good starter kit, because in my book you've got lots of easy flowers like the evening primrose, for example, or the little forget-me-nots, or the primrose. All of these are easy ones to start with from my book. And also in my book there are step-by-step instructions on how to do all these things. So at the end, I don't know if you can see, but you've got all the needle felting instructions, you've got how to make the balls, you've got how to make the stamens, and you've got how to do the wet felting and all of that as well. So it's quite comprehensive in there if you want to have a go at everything. If you and the poppy's very popular as well, that one. So that's got lots of stamens around a big needle felted centre, and then 2 lots of petals. There's holly, there's all sorts in there. Or just have a go with the kit. But if you do buy one of the kits, you need to buy the little mat and the net separately. And then also, you could just buy a copy of my book, which we sell separately as well. And all the books are signed, by the way, by yours truly. And that's pretty much it. How are we doing for time? Yeah, nearly an hour. Seriously, you need to go off and have some lunch now and stop listening to me. Hoping to be back again soon with another one. And thank you all for tuning in. Are there any more questions before I go, Christopher?
No.
No. All right. Thank you. Bye.